Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. You know, maybe you're as confused as me about the Nunez memo and who to believe and who not to believe and what does it mean. Was it before they said it was the most important thing and then it got released and then nothing happened. And so I just want, I figured if there's anybody who can explain it to us, it's NSA Whistleblower and member of VIPS, Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, who debunked the WMD's lie in real time as it was happening. So he's here with us right now. You know him from the show before. It's William Binney. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Pretty good, Jimmy. Good to be with you again.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. And so just so everybody knows who you are, just to remind them, you were with the NSA for 30 years. You were. Would it be a stretch to say you were their top code breaker?
Oh, I would never take that claim on, but I did some pretty good stuff, so I had a lot of fun doing it. So
okay. So if you see, they even made a documentary about him. We're going to put a link, The Good American, and that's how, what a smarty pants this guy is over at the NSA. He invented Thin Thread, which was a metadata collection that was actually superior to what they're using now, and it protected everyone's identity. So, and it was inexpensive, so they had to get rid of that right away. Anyway, that's who William Binney is, and he's he's had the FBI lie about him. Correct? Did that happen?
Yes. In fact, they did it in sworn affidavits to the court, and they also falsified evidence against us.
Right. Okay. So that's what they do to whistleblowers. And so That's why you can believe. That's why I feel like I can trust you and believe you. And because you've put everything on the line for your country and Constitution and not a political party and not your own neck. Right. I mean, it's for yourself. You did it for the country. That's a real patriot. So that's why I feel like I can go to you and you can explain it to us. And I hope you're willing to. Can you explain to people? Because before the Nunez memo came out, first of all, I don't even think people realize why we have to guess about what stuff means, because everything's done in secret at this thing called the FISA court. And how do you feel about it? No one even talks about that we even have a secret court. Does that bother you?
Well, that court should be disbanded, in my view. It doesn't belong to the Article 3 courts. You know, the difference between an Article 3 court and this court is an Article 3 court, you have opposing views on an issue, and both views are heard by the judge, and the judge adjudicates based on the law and the Constitution, but he hears both sides. In the FISA court, it's run on the 6th floor, I believe, of the Department of Justice building. There is nobody there but government people, and the only evidence they hear is what the government tells them, and they can't verify any of it. And so that means they're totally trusting to the government that lies to them and everybody else. And that's part of the felonies that are going on here and have been going on since September 11, has occurred. They've been committing these kinds of felonies all along.
So people don't even understand. We have a special secret court that's supposed to be there to fight terrorism, but somehow they and you can get you can get warrants to wiretap people and stuff, which they did to the Trump administration through this court, this FISA court. And so I just want people to know that that's what this is all about. And the reason why no one really knows what's happening is because it's all done in secret. And what you're really describing is that it's not an adversarial process, that there's just there's nobody there. There's no defense to the judge. There's just what the government, the FBI or the CIA, whoever's presenting the case, what the Justice Department, what they say to the judge. That's all the judge hears. He doesn't know if it's verifiable. He has to take their word for it. But it turns out the FBI has even admitted a bunch of times, like said back in 2002, correct me if I'm wrong, that they actually did present false information to the FISA court all the time. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that came out in August, I think, of 2002, when they were talking about that FISA court. And it came out that they had basically misrepresented evidence in a court at least 75 times that the court found out. So that was at that time. Now, since then, they've gone through about 30-some thousand requests, and they've refused, I think, 5 or 10 maybe, and that's about it. There's another program going on here that's not even addressed by the FISA court, and it's done in secret, also in the Article 3 courts, the regular courts. what they've been doing, and this is where they have a program that's called parallel construction. That is, they will use the NSA data for common crimes committed inside this country.
What?
Because collecting all the data on everybody, they can do this, okay? They can find drug dealers, everything.
See, but that's against the Constitution, though. You can't do that.
We're doing it in secret, and we never tell you. That's why we know it's a crime. That's why we're keeping it secret from you. That's the whole point of it. And they're doing this regularly, and the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration, including the IRS, is a part of this. And they're all looking at this NSA data to find common crime.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Well, that's blatantly unconstitutional and illegal. Why isn't? I'm not kidding. Like, my hair should be on fire about this, right, Bill? That sounds crazy to me that they were able to do that.
Well, it even gets worse now. You have to wait for the worst to come along. Once they find common crime in the NSA data, they tip off local and state police to go arrest these people. They don't give them the evidence. They say, go arrest them. Go here when they come up in the truck or something, park in that parking place, go arrest them, bring in the drug dogs and find the drugs. Then in order to justify the arrest, what they do is called a parallel construction. And this is policy run by the Department of Justice of the United States. What it is they say, okay, we know these guys were criminals. We had it in the NSA data, but you can't use that data in court of law because it wasn't acquired with a warrant, so it's not admissible. So we have to go find the similar kind of data, since we know where it is. It makes it easier, and we send the police out to do our own little investigation, assemble that evidence, and say, okay, now we're going to substitute this evidence for the NSA data in the court of law when we try them. When we do that, we can't put any of this statements of where the original source was from NSA. We can't give the court, the lawyers, or anybody in the criminal process the understanding that was the original basis. So that's perjury. Every time they did it, and according to Senator Feinstein, she stumbled and bumbled and gave this away. She said, well, this program's been so valuable, we put hundreds of people in jail every year with it. Well, that's thousands of people in jail based on perjury by the Department of Justice of the United States. And that's been going on since 9/11. They've been using the domestic spying program, the Stellar Wind program in NSA to do it.
So they're supposed to be using these NSA spying, right, in theory, to catch terrorists, right? Isn't that what this is? And why we're willing to give up this certain amount of rights is because they're supposed to be spying to get terrorists. But what you're saying is that they're using the surveillance state for regular crimes, and then they're telling the cops, they're tipping off the cops, the local cops, about the crime, and then telling them. Did they tell them to scrub where you got this originally from, and then construct your own parallel investigate, or just go ahead and here's the information you have, now go find some of your own evidence? That's what they're doing?
Well, they don't. They do that for them. They create the parallel construction, but they don't give them the raw data from NSA.
Okay.
All they do is tell them what to do once they know what's going to happen from that NSA data.
Right. Okay. So they'll say, like, hey, there's going to be a drug deal go down at this place, right? And then they'll show up, and that's not legal. When Reuters reported this, they interviewed one of the federal agents involved in the program. And he said, this is such a great program, I just hope we can keep it secret. This is destroying our judicial system. What? And so how come there isn't anyone? I don't understand, Bill. It can't be as bad as it sounds, because this obviously someone would be doing something about it, right?
Well, they're talking about doing something now because it's being used against the politicians in Washington. That's the only reason they're talking about it. On the common people, we don't matter, okay? We're dealing with the Department of Just Us here, and we're not included in that.
And so why isn't there more people screaming about, you would think there would be people on the left and right who would be upset about the government intrusion of privacy like this? Because here's the problem, right? So why this matters, right? So if people go, I don't care if the government reads my email, if they catch a crime, not a criminal, who cares? Well, let's say you caught the government committing a crime and they knew it, and now they know that you know it, right? Because they're spying on you. Right? And then they can now smear you or arrest you or charge you with something before you get to give your is that what you're saying, kind of? That's one possibility, right?
Well, that's what they did to us, Jimmy. They made up information. The only difference is I caught them at it. So I threatened them with malicious prosecution. If I didn't have that evidence against them, and I gave them the evidence, so they knew I had the goods on them, so they backed off. That's the only reason they did that. Otherwise, and somebody at the Department of Justice felt so bad about what they were doing to us, they sent us a copy of their draft indictment on us. And so that even gave us even more evidence of their lying and perjury in an affidavit going to the court. That's a felony.
So it seems like no one gets in trouble anymore for committing, like Clapper. Clapper famously lied to Congress on TV, and nothing happens. And people see what they do to, when Petraeus, when he gives up classified information, he gets a job teaching at NYU, and when someone else does it, they get thrown. They take a picture of themselves on a nuclear sub, a selfie. They get thrown in the clink. Right? So we see there's two tiers of justice, right? And now you're saying that this secret process and this parallel construction and this secret FISA court is now coming back to bite politicians in the ass. That's what you're saying. So now you're saying people are actually talking about, what are they saying? How are they? Who's talking about it? What are they recommending?
Well, I mean, it's this Nunes memo. It shows really the connection with Christopher Steele, his connections with the DNC and the FBI and the Department of Justice, and the collusion between them to fabricate evidence to present to the FISA court. That's another fabrication going forward to the FISA court to get a warrant to go and spy on just a person in the Trump campaign. But let me tell you what that does. That the intelligence community, once they're allowed to spy on somebody like that, they can go 2 hops from that person. Well, so that means every friend of that person, every friend of that friend. But it goes even beyond that, because I opposed it originally, the 2-hop principle, back in January of 2014, when President Obama was trying to do something to limit the scope of the spying and everything. So, and he limited it to 2 hops, but he didn't include the little restriction on that I was trying to get to him to say. The restriction is the second hop, you can't use a commercial business or a department of government to go through for that second hop. Because, for example, if in the first hop they consider going to Google, for example, then the second hop from Google out is to 1.5 billion people per day, which means that in a very few days you have everybody on the planet. That means that from that 2-hop principle, without excluding businesses or government agencies, you can go to basically everybody on the planet.
So let me just
open it up to everybody.
So let me clarify what so people might be glazing over, because what's a 2-hop? So if they get a warrant to spy on one person, that includes, or implied in that warrant is that they can also spy on two people, like two separations away from them.
Yeah, like I call you, that's the first hop. When you call somebody else, that's the second hop.
And so they get to listen in on all those conversations?
That's correct.
What the? I didn't know that. So if they get a warrant on one person in the Trump administration, that's as good as getting a warrant on everybody in
the whole thing. That's right.
And so when Trump said that the Obama administration had bugged the Trump Tower, what was he wrong, or was he kind of right?
No,
or
he was
what?
Absolutely right. Yeah, he was absolutely right. But I wouldn't use the word bugged, because they're doing it through the switch network. So it means that all they do is remotely from NSA, they can tie into everything from there remotely by attaching it to the switches. So all they do is say, give me everything out of this building, right? So, or give me everything on all the Trump people, and they know all those and all the phone numbers. So just give me all of it.
And so the problem with this the Nunes memo is about this process of getting this warrant for right. Which gave the government, the FBI, and everybody to get the ability to spy on the Trump campaign and administration. And the Democrats didn't want them to release it because they said it would jeopardize national security. They released it; it didn't jeopardize any national security. So now their credibility is impugned over this memo, as far as I'm concerned. Right? They already got caught lying about it. And so now it comes out, and what that memo revealed is what you're saying, is that you're saying that the FBI didn't give the judge all the information it was supposed to, and that
Well, they
that's a felony.
misrepresented it.
Go ahead.
And that's a felony. That's a felony to misrepresent evidence in a court of law.
So you're saying you're going even one step further to say that the FBI misrepresented evidence to the FISA judge to get this warrant.
Yep. And just like all the other parallel constructions since 2001 that they've been running, the FBI and the DEA, and that's been felonies all along. That's perjury in a court of law, perjuring and presenting false evidence, because it denies the defendant the right to discovery and challenge any of the evidence used against them, because it's false evidence, not the evidence that was really the basis for their arrest. It was the NSA data. That was the basis. But they can't introduce it because it's not admissible. So they have to do this parallel construction, and it ends up making them perjure themselves in a court of law.
And so why isn't anyone talking? Like, why wouldn't you would think some? So what? I just don't get it. How could this? Jimmy. I mean, how could this happen in America? Honest to God, I know that sounds naive, right?
Well, I would agree with you. This is supposed to be my country, not theirs, and they're really destroying it. So, but it's not just our country, though. This goes through the MLAT network, Mutual Law Enforcement Treaty Act, through the representatives in all the embassies in the world that they have relationships with around the world, and they pass all this data out as alerts for them to go do things too. But they never give them the raw data. They never give them the evidence because it came from NSA. And this is clearly written down in the instructions for the DEA and out of the DOJ. You are not to talk about the source of this information in a court of law. You're not to put it down in anything writing or any evidential base. You don't do anything like that. You simply give the evidence to them, let them arrest, then do this parallel construction. And that's what you substitute in court.
And so what is it, Bill? Are all the reporters over at CNN just dumb? And they don't know about this is happening? I mean, the person who's their criminal justice lawyer or whatever, or their intelligence reporter, wouldn't he know about this stuff? Wouldn't they be blowing the whistle on this all the time?
Yeah, they know about it, but they don't do anything because they are no longer performing their duty under the First Amendment of the Constitution. That's why the free press is there. They're supposed to be investigating what our government's doing and telling the people of the country what their government's really doing, and they're not fulfilling that responsibility.
Boy, so like if I found out, I couldn't wait to tell people about this, that this is happening. That's the whole point of having a show. So you're saying that the people in the media, you don't think it's just ignorance of this going on? It's just that they know it and they don't want to report it because it would upset their contacts at the government? What's in it for them not reporting it, you think?
Well, I mean, Jim Rosen, the Associated Press, they all found out about what happens to things when you start to talk about things they don't want you to talk about.
Because then they get a wiretap on you, and then
And you get threatened with grand juries and things like that, you know?
And it always seems like they get you for lying to the FBI. That always seems like this catch-all, right? Yeah,
that's the ultimate thing. If they can't get you for anything else, they'll get you for that. I mean, who can remember everything exactly when you go in and somebody asks you a question? How can you remember everything?
Right.
I mean, it's just almost impossible. So you always get caught with a lie. And they'll call it a lie. And yet they can lie to you and to courts in sworn affidavits and perjure themselves in a court of law, and nothing happens to them.
So, you think that this Nunez memo actually reveals treason?
Yes,
but not
against
the kind
the founding principles of our nation, the Constitution.
And so, I know that's what we've been talking about for 20 minutes, but just lay out very briefly, how does this Nunez memo reveal treason?
Well, it's the fact that the DNC and the FBI and the DOJ coordinated to fabricate evidence to pass to the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on their other political opponents. That's using the agencies of the government against the government process per se. That's fundamentally sedition. Okay, You're trying to destroy the government, really, and that's really what's going on. But also, it's felonies. Right? The felony lying to the court, and fabricating evidence, covering up evidence, obstruction of justice. I mean, how many more things can we add here?
So, how would it ever get cleaned up? It doesn't. I mean, it seems like the whole agency, all the agencies are in on this, along with the court. And now, but you're saying the politicians are starting to turn?
Yeah, I think simply because it's being targeted at them, they're now starting to pay attention. Until they got targeted themselves, they weren't paying attention. I mean, who do we the simple people of the country, we don't matter.
Right.
Okay. Only those in charge matter.
Does Trump?
It's in bubble in D.C. You know.
Now I know you're in contact with Pompeo, correct? Is that an ongoing relationship, or is that a one-time deal?
So far, it's only been one time.
Okay. So do you think that the Trump administration has any? It would seem like it would be in their interest to want to get rid of this secret court, but then he would look weak against fighting terrorism. I wouldn't see that at all. He'd force it out in the open where people could understand what was going on, you know, and it wouldn't be a case you couldn't hide what the intelligence, all the crimes the intelligence community and the police are doing. Well, is he going to do that, you think?
I would hope so. I mean, that's why I came out and said all this stuff after the meeting, because I wanted to confront everybody, including the mainstream media, in the public, you know, out in public where everybody can see it. I mean, you can't hide these things. You hide them, they just fester and you know, and it just keeps going on, and it never stops. So unless you bring it out in the open and shine the light on it, it'll never get cleaned up. There's no chance of it getting cleaned up when you don't do that.
Wow. Okay. So what? And so when the news doesn't report, I just can't get over the fact that I've been listening for over a week now, and maybe two, about the reporting on the Nunez memo, and the mainstream news, even what the people pretend to say is lefty news, which it's not, it's corporate news, the MSNBC. And they don't tell you the truth. They just like, oh, it's a big nothing burger. That's right. Isn't that what they've been saying, Ron? Yeah, that's been what I couldn't. It's crazy. And you're saying it's literally this whole process is a treasonous, seditious process. This parallel construction. Nobody talk. You would think that the.
And I would point out, one of my friends in the VIPs, Ray McGovern, was listening to a talk given by Mueller about a year or two ago. And when he went up to him afterward and asked him a question. And he asked him, Director Mueller, do you have any problems with parallel construction? And Mueller said, no, not at all.
Wow.
So, and Mueller even admitted to this using the domestic spying program in an interview with Bart Gellman in 2011 in the Time magazine. It was written up there where he said he and his FBI had been using stellar wind since 2001. Well, that tells you that for 10 years at that point, he was approving all this use of the illegally collected domestic content and metadata on U.S. citizens for prosecuting crime, common crime and other crime, any kind of crime in the United States.
Well, it just doesn't seem like...
This is this pure guy Mueller, okay,
yeah,
that everybody's hollering about. Comey was also a part of that. He and Mueller were together at the hospital visit in 2004 when they were talking about this stellar wind program. That was what that was all about. And they all went on and then went on and proceeded with this parallel construction, this whole idea and the concept of using the stellar wind data for common crime as well as anything else. So, I mean, you know, and they used it against the IRS saw it and used it against the Tea Party. They used it against the Occupy group. They used it against Elliot Spitzer. They used against the news people, Jim Rosen, the Associated Press. I mean, this is this kind of power, giving this kind of power to people. Eventually, they use it, and this is the kind of things that they use it against.
Like this is,
and so, you know, when they say nobody's been hurt, there a hell of a lot of people have been hurt. I mean, I could also go to Joe Naccio, you former CEO of Quest Communications, that company. Well, he was in a court of law, and it was testified. He was approached in February of 2001, before 9/11, by NSA, and they were asking him to turn over all the data on his customers at that time. Well, you know, That's even before 9/11. So they had a plan on spying on the U.S. citizens even before 9/11. So what happened to Joe Naccio? And he told me this. I talked to him. They fabricated evidence about him and put him in jail for 5 years. They did that to us, but we caught them at it. Okay. So in that case, he went to jail for 5 years. Now, what did that do? That told every other CEO of every communications company, if you don't cooperate with us, this is the kind of thing that happens to you. So, shape up and participate or else. So he was the poster boy for trying to follow the law, and he asked for a warrant written by and signed by a judge to turn over the data, and they wouldn't give it to him. That's because you couldn't. I mean, it was a violation of the Constitution to do that, and they knew that. So that's what they did to him.
Okay, so why does it? So you're saying no one? Well, I was just going to ask you, how come nobody who's got power in this country cares about that? How come no one's
They're
saying?
Basically, most of them are a part of it.
And you're saying because they make an example out of one CEO, the guy from Quest, right? They put him in jail, and so that's puts a chill in the. Well, Jeff. Do you definitely think there's a conflict of interest with Jeff Bezos owning the Washington Post and then being on a Pentagon board and having a deal with the CIA at the same time?
Well, I mean, the CIA has made an effort for decades to infiltrate media.
Right.
So, I mean, I find it very consistent. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, so what do you think? So now, again, I feel like I've asked this 3 times already, and I keep forgetting what you say. You say politicians are going to do something about it. You're saying Trump? You hope he does something, and what can he do?
And I think what we need to see now is that Sessions has criminal referrals to a grand jury. I mean, Sessions needs to start issuing criminal referrals here.
And but people are going to say, so they've already planted the seed in everyone's head. If Trump does something like that, they're ginning up fake outrage over the FBI, right? That's what I'm seeing in the media, right? That's what you're seeing?
Well, that's the way they're characterizing it. But in a court of law, their word, it means nothing. It's hearsay. It's just not admissible evidence. We'll be dealing with admissible evidence when we go to a court of law.
And you think Jeff Sessions gonna who's he gonna prosecute? Mueller?
If he doesn't, yes. As a matter of fact, he's guilty too. Yeah,
I mean, I get it. I hear you're right. He is guilty, but they're all guilty. It's like the whole system
is. That's why it's been so hard and so difficult. They've all been a part of the cover-up too.
And come on. So you're saying that Trump is going to come in and clean up the intelligence community? That is
he needs to do something. He needs to start to do something to make an example of something. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
No, that's what I'm saying. I agree. I mean, I think nothing's going to change.
You just think that? Okay. Well, that of all of if I were to calculate the random probability of correctness of the outcome, I would say probably 80% right. You're right.
Yeah. Wow.
Something like that.
It's almost like it's right out in the open and no one cares, right? Everyone knows we live in a surveillance state, and people just accept it. They got rid of hate. Go ahead.
But I think actually a lot of them feel there's nothing they can do.
That's how I feel right now.
But I think there's more that people don't realize the power they have. All they have to do is, the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Right.
So you have to act like a squeaky wheel. Stand up and squeak. I mean, and confront these people in town meetings or wherever you can, in public, and make it public so that you can expose them and put them on the spot. And say, if you guys don't start changing this stuff, we're going to fire you, get somebody else, and come after you. So, that's the way I'd do it. I'm already involved in 3 separate lawsuits against the U.S. government for constitutional violations of everybody's privacy in the 4th Amendment, 1st, 4th, and 5th and 6th Amendments. Yeah.
Right. And what's
and I filed sworn affidavits to that effect too.
Okay. Wow. So when can we talk to you? What's the progress on those lawsuits?
Government is still dragging them out.
Okay.
That's the whole point. They figure they got more money and more time,
right?
So they're going to keep dragging it out because the point is, if the case gets into the Supreme Court, one case did already, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But if a case does get to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court rules it unconstitutional, everything they've done falls. All that retroactive immunity, that falls. Everything falls. It's no longer valid. You can't pass a law that violates the Constitution, and that would be a violation of the Constitution right there. So all those laws would fall, and all those telecoms, everybody would be liable for their actions and criminal acts against the constitutional rights of the citizens of this country.
So tell me about the case that did get to the Supreme Court.
That was Amnesty International versus Clapper. Chris Hedges was a member of that plaintiff in that lawsuit. And what happened in the lawsuit was, this issue of parallel construction came up, and the fact that the NSA data was being used against people in the court of law in criminal cases. And when that came up, the Solicitor General of the United States lied to the Supreme Court to get it thrown out. He said anybody in a criminal case where NSA data was used, they will be told that NSA data was used against them so that they can challenge discovery of that data in the court of law.
And that's not
true.
In
fact, no one was told.
And so
if I were on the Supreme Court, I would say, I'm reinstating this case with prejudice against the United States and hold the United States government in contempt of the Supreme Court. I would have done that.
And so are you telling me that John Roberts isn't aware of that guy lied?
No, he's aware of it. He went along with it.
And so they just go along?
They go along to get along. I assume that NSA's got something against him.
So it's like we're living in the land of J. Edgar Hoover, but it's on steroids to the 10th power, all that things you could say about it, right? So
yes, he's on super steroids, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when people say the deep state and other people scoff at them like there's some, crazy,
yep.
That's exactly what they want them to do, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's all a conspiracy theory.
Right. Yeah, it's all a conspiracy. Right. Yeah, well, guess what? The conspiracy theory was? The Iraq War was a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Right?
And so Vietnam. Yeah.
So was Vietnam. Right, exactly. So it's Libya. That was a conspiracy, right?
Yep. All of it.
Look, I just before I appreciate your time and thanks for explaining it. This is mind-blowing. So what now the Democrats wanted to release their own memo. Trump didn't allow it, because he said there was classified information in it. I think that's what he said. So is this over now? What happens now?
No. I would ask President Trump to reconsider, expose everything.
Yeah.
Classification be damned. Our country's at stake. Our democracy, our republic is at stake. That's the point.
I agree.
And there's no classification of anything is worth losing that.
I agree, but the people say that he doesn't want to release the Democratic memo because it has damaging information about him. So that's why he doesn't want to release it.
All right. So, but that's what people are saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust what people say. Opinions and all that are like body parts. Everybody's got them, but they're about as meaningless as that.
Yeah. So do you find it funny? I find it's pathetic and sad that the people on the left, because of their hatred for Trump, have found themselves propping up the FBI. Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're a part of this. They paid for this dossier from Steele, and also the FBI paid Steele for some of that dossier too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
And he also was the evidence given to Yahoo, for news.
You're right. Michael Isikoff.
They used that Yahoo News and the dossier to get this is the fabrication going forward to the FISA court. That's what was sent to the FISA court by the FBI, the DOJ, and the DNC.
Right. I know.
That was all a coordinated effort. Well, that's called subversion, sedition, perjury.
And so you think what would you say are the chances that Jeff Sessions actually does charge somebody over this?
The reality of it, I think, is about 80-20. He won't do anything.
Yeah, that's what I think.
But I think he should be fired if he doesn't.
And
I guess I'm a hardliner,
I'm with you. I'm
absolute constitutionalist.
No, of course I agree. I just think it's yes, of course that's what's supposed to happen, but that's not what's going to happen.
No, because we are not included in the Department of Just Us.
Yeah.